Okay, welcome back, folks. This week is about the fender, getting that fitted and bolted on, which I've done. We're starting to look more like a car all the time. I'm going to be putting that other fender, taking that off and cleaning it up in a future episode. But this week is this fender here, where I epoxy prime the inside parts where you don't see, and then install it, get the door gap set, get the door so it opens and closes good, so everything fits pretty decent now. And that's what we're going over today. Okay, here's the second coat of Bondo dried on, so I'm going to start working on that. I have a few different sanding blocks to work with, and we'll see how this goes. And I wouldn't doubt if it takes a third and a fourth try, but we're going to keep working on this, and we're going to get it at least close before I put it on the car. Okay, I've done some sanding on here. Things are coming out pretty decent. You can still feel this stuff. I'm going to have to build it up a little bit here and in here. You know, probably a bunch of places. A little bit here and up here. As you can see, there's old Bondo there from where the car was repaired before. So I'm just blending it together. There's a good ridge here. I've sanded on this quite a bit, and but I'm getting things straighter, if that's actually a word, and put on another layer there, and then after that I'll probably spray some paint over it so that I could do a light sanding and it'll show me the lows. Okay, I put another layer on there. Up here you can see where it started to harden on me. This is what happens when you put too much hardener in, and it does it too fast, unfortunately. One of those experience things where you learn it as you get better at it. I could probably sand this already, but I'm not going to. I'm going to wait till tomorrow, and then I'll just continue with the video. Okay, this layer is dry now, so I'm going to sand on this and see what it looks like when I'm done. And I should be pretty close to where I can test fit it and you know, stop at that point, because I'm not going to make it perfect just yet. But the idea being to get this car together so I can test drive it and mechanically get it worked out before I go crazy with paint. So let the sanding begin. Alright, we have this sanded down. I have some low spots. I'm going to have to put another layer of Bondo on there and get this smoothed out as best I can. And then it's going to be switching over to putting a guide coat on, and then studying the results of that after for the low spots that are harder to see. So progress is being made, and it is getting better. Okay, here I am. I have this sanded down again. It's getting a lot closer than it was. There's some areas through here still. They're going to have to be built up some more probably. And but up here is pretty good. So I think what I'm going to do, because it's getting late in the day and I have to get ready to go to work, I'm going to spray some primer on this, so that way tomorrow I can sand down and have a really clear picture of the low spots, and then I can continue with it. That should, you know, plus the primer will give me a better visual of where I'm at right now. Okay, here it is with some primer on it. I'm not sure. Maybe this angle will show you, you know, this area here that's not so pretty, that I got to work on more. So tomorrow when I take some finer grit paper just to scrub off the high spots of the primer, then it'll show me very clearly where I have to work. But I think right through here, because I'm starting to get a line here, but right through here is a spot that's not cooperating yet, but I'm getting there. Okay, here's some more work done on here. Now this is filled in and it's rounded pretty good, so I'm going to say I'm happy with that, and I'm going to spray some primer on it in a minute, and I think that's going to make this plenty good enough. When I get around to fitting it to the car, if everything lines up halfway decent, I think I'm going to call this good. So let's see what it looks like with primer on it. Okay, here we are with primer on it. Obviously everything isn't, but I think I got it actually pretty good. So the next step is this will dry. I'll spray some black on it so that the whole, you can see it better, and then I'll put it on the car. I think that'll be good enough for road testing, because I'm going to road test this car and get it mechanically proven before I actually do expensive work on the body. So there it is. Okay, this is what it looks like with some paint on it. It's not actually too bad. So now it's almost time for test fitting on the car, and then once I fix all the various spots on the car that need repair, then I can get back to the final steps of preparing it for paint and all that. But this is a really good start for where we're at. This is just rattle can paint that I had laying around just to cover the metal up, and also to show me if I got the shape anywhere near right, and I do. It's hard because it's not all polished and even, but it's quite good. It's quite good. So now I can move on to the next thing, which is going to be to get after the inside of the fender with some epoxy primer to seal it up, and then I can put it on the car. Okay, here's the back side of the fender. I put a little more of that rust converter on it. I'm letting that dry. Instructions say to wait 24 hours before painting over it, so that's going to be later on. And so I'm getting after different parts of it. Like here I got after it some, and there's different places around. So a little bit at a time, cleaning and letting that dry, and then I'll get the inside of this coated with the white epoxy. Okay, so the fender is eventually going to be put onto the car. I'm letting this all dry, and but as you can see, I'm doing the inside with the white epoxy. The outside will be done later with the car together. That way, I can spray it all at once, because this little barn is not very conducive to a lot of this work, but I find a way to make it work. There's the fender at the bottom. I got a pretty good crease there, pretty good line. So it's not bad. And this, of course, is just spray bomb paint for the time being, because it gets very damp around here. But the fender is good now. And as soon as it's dry, I'm going to get after putting that on and moving on to the other fender. For the time being, while I'm waiting on that, I'm going to take this inner fender well back off, clean up down here a little bit better, and the front emergency brake cable needs to be replaced. So it makes sense to do it now with the fender off, obviously, because it'd be a lot easier that way. Okay, we're back. I got a couple more things done. I got the this front brake cable changed, and that was a lot more convenient in here without the fender well in the way. And up here, painted on some of that rust converter. But the more important thing was there was 2 broken bolts here that I managed to get out, so now I can put the fender well back in and have all 4 bolts holding it like it's supposed to be. And then going from there, these extra wires from when I was doping out all the wiring, what I'm going to do is it's going to be hidden on top of the fender well, under behind the top of the fender, similar to the way I hid wiring there. That way, in the end, I'm going to have it cleaned up pretty good, and I'll maybe even someday clean up the way I put the plug wires, because they're pretty messy too. But in the end, I'm going to have it looking decent when you open the hood. But for right now, I got to get started on putting that fender well back in. Okay, so here's this piece of scrap metal that I just used. I bent it up to use for this as a holding device for these wires. They use the holes that go through this inner fender well, and they'll be held in place, and they'll be hidden by the fender. I'll show just now. Where those bolts go through is here and here. So these wires are going to be in here behind. And then they'll follow down through into the fuse box, of course. but that's not going to be visible really unless somebody's looking for them. And so that's a good place to put them all, because these are wires that are unused because I rewired everything over there, and I left these intact for if I sell the car and a future owner wants the original wiring to put back. It's here, and some of it I labeled as best I could. This one I have no idea what it is, but I didn't cut it. And so now these wires are being used, of course. This here's I forget what it goes to. Oh, it says right here, 4 ways. And this one here is the ground wire going for the windshield washer, which I haven't installed yet. The original windshield washer doesn't work, so I'm going to install a universal one here and do it that way instead. So this is all ready for the fender to go back on. I got my emergency brake cable run through. I got the bolts in. I fixed up the threads there. So this is now just waiting for paint to dry basically, and then I can install the fender. I took these bolts out. Those are all set. So now it's just a matter of assembly tomorrow when the paint's dry. Okay, so I let this dry overnight. So right now I'm just chasing some holes with a tap because you know, paint got in there plus whatever dings are in the holes. But after that, then I'm going to start putting the fender on. Okay, here's the fender partially installed. These bolts I left a little bit loose so I can move the fender around. Back here I have one shim behind that one. This one doesn't have any shims. This is held up. You can see this is pretty close right here, so that's good. Trying to keep this, you know, from hitting. The bottom is not hooked yet, so you can see that. That's going to be the next thing that I go to. So I open the door, and it okay, that bolt is in. So now the next step is to do the bottom and get it so the door opens and shuts without touching it all. Because as you can see, it touches just a little bit there. But as you can see, this is in. So that way I have to do the bottom 2 bolts. That's the next thing. Okay, I got the bottom bolted up, so now we'll try the door. Yeah, the door opens, shuts, doesn't hit, and the line is relatively tight. It's not too bad. Down at the very bottom, I'm off a little bit, but not enough that I care. This is actually pretty good for an amateur job. Now I can tighten these 2 front bolts and then get to bolting the inner fender well properly. So that's going to mean taking the tire off to get room to work, but there we go, we're coming along. Okay, the fender is all on. I have these 2 bolts here that are holding that piece I showed earlier on. It's holding it in place. So this is all nice and secured. You can see the wiring here a little bit. Once you get the hood hinges in there, it's not going to really show up at all. I mean, you'll be able to find it, but it won't be you know, a major problem. I'm going to put my water overflow for the radiator on this side and plumb it across. Hopefully it works okay. But I think I got things straightened up pretty good. Now it's a matter of finishing up what little wiring on this side, and that's it. The next step is to go to the other side. This battery box needs to be finalized, and I got a different battery because that's very, very close. So I got a different battery that'll make some distance there, and I'll probably have some sort of rubber cover for that terminal anyway, but still, this battery fits the Chrysler project, so it really wasn't a cost to just buy a battery and then swap it out. Get the battery box finalized, get the wiring underneath there finalized. I still haven't done the control to the electric fan. And then of course, get the fender, take that back off, do the inside of it with white, and get it ready for proper installation and adjustment. The car's looking good now. It's starting to look like a car.